I helped a wounded time traveler, and the secret he revealed about my family shook me to my core. This is not a story about science fiction. This is not about fantasy or imagination. What I'm about to tell you happened to me, and it changed everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and the choices we make every single day. If you are ready to hear a truth that most people will never discover, stay with me. Because what happened in that cornfield in Nebraska will open your eyes to something that has been hidden from you your entire life. Marcus Chen was lying in bed staring at the ceiling when the explosion happened. It was not thunder. It was not a plane. It was something else entirely, something that shook the windows and made the old farmhouse groan on its foundation. The clock on his nightstand read 2:47 in the morning. At 58 years old, Marcus had learned to ignore strange noises. Living alone on his deceased parents' farm meant plenty of unexplained sounds. Animals in the fields, old pipes rattling, wind through the broken barn door. But this was different. This was violent. He got up slowly, his knees protesting the way they always did now. 3 years since his wife passed. 5 years since his daughter stopped speaking to him. A lifetime of loss had made him cautious, suspicious of anything that demanded his attention. The night was perfectly clear. No storm, no clouds, no explanation for what he had heard. That made it worse somehow. Marcus pulled on his boots and grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer. He told himself he would just check the perimeter, probably a gas line rupture or a transformer explosion. But when he stepped outside and looked toward the back cornfield, his blood went cold. There was light out there, not fire, not electricity. Something else, something that pulsed with colors he could not name, shifting from blue to silver, to something that hurt his eyes to look at directly. Marcus walked toward it. Every instinct screamed at him to go back inside, to call someone, to pretend he had not seen anything. But he kept walking. The corn was tall this time of year, almost ready for harvest. He pushed through the stalks until he reached the clearing, and then he stopped completely. There was something in the field, something large, metallic, half buried in the earth where it had crashed. Smoke rose from its surface. The metal seemed to move, to breathe, changing color as he watched. It was not a plane, it was not a satellite, it was not anything Marcus recognized from 60 years of living on this planet. And there was someone inside. He could see movement through a crack in the hull. Someone was hurt. Marcus stood frozen, his flashlight beam shaking in his grip. He had a choice to make: walk away and pretend this never happened, or step forward into something that would change his life forever. He stepped forward. Marcus moved carefully toward the wreckage, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The closer he got, the stranger everything became. The metal of the vessel was not like anything he had ever seen. It seemed almost liquid, shifting and rippling even though it was clearly solid. The smoke had a strange smell, not burning fuel, not melting plastic. Something cleaner, almost electric. It made the hair on his arms stand up. Through the crack in the hull, he could see a figure slumped against what looked like a control panel. Human-shaped, definitely human-shaped, but wearing materials that caught the pulsing light in impossible ways. The figure was not moving. Marcus knew he should call for help. He knew he should dial 911 and let professionals handle this. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the military training from his army days. Maybe it was the instinct that told him bringing attention to this would create chaos he could not control. He reached into the crack and pulled. The metal gave way easier than expected, peeling back like it wanted to open for him. Inside, the vessel was dark except for flickering lights on panels covered in symbols he did not recognize. The figure was a man. That much was clear now. He looked human, completely human, but his clothes were wrong. The fabric moved on its own, and there were devices attached to his wrists that glowed faintly. Blood ran from a wound on his forehead, dark and wet. Marcus checked for a pulse. It was there, steady but weak. The man was alive. For a long moment, Marcus just stood there, bent over this impossible stranger in this impossible vessel. His mind raced through options. If he called the authorities, this place would be swarming with people within the hour: military, government, scientists. His quiet life would be over. But if he did not call, and this man died, Marcus would carry that weight forever. He made his decision. He reached down and lifted the stranger, surprised at how light he was. The man groaned but did not wake. Marcus carried him out of the vessel and into the corn, then across the field toward the farmhouse. It took 15 minutes to get inside. Marcus laid the stranger on the couch in the living room, the same couch where his wife used to read her novels. He gathered his old Army medical kit and began cleaning the wound. The cut was not deep. Head wounds always bled more than they should. Marcus bandaged it carefully, then checked for other injuries. Some bruising on the ribs, maybe cracked but not broken. Nothing life-threatening. When he was done, Marcus sat in the chair across from the couch and watched the stranger breathe. Outside, the first light of dawn was creeping over the fields. "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty room. But even as he said it, he knew he would not change his choice. The stranger did not wake for 16 hours. Marcus spent that time in a state of controlled panic, checking on his patient every 30 minutes, pacing the floors, looking out the windows for any sign that someone had seen the crash. But the farm was isolated. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. No one came. He tried to eat but could not. He tried to sleep, but his mind would not quiet. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that vessel, that impossible machine sitting in his cornfield. He had covered it with tarps and corn stalks before dawn, hiding it as best he could, but he knew it was still there, waiting. When the stranger finally opened his eyes, Marcus was sitting in the kitchen drinking cold coffee. He heard movement from the living room and rushed in to find the man struggling to sit up, panic clear on his face. "Easy," Marcus said, hands raised. "You are hurt. You need to rest." The stranger looked at him with eyes that seemed too aware, too sharp for someone who had just been unconscious for most of a day. He looked around the room, taking in the old furniture, the photographs on the walls, the calendar hanging near the door. And then he froze. "No," he said, his voice rough but clear. "No, no, no, I overshot. I overshot by decades." Marcus did not understand. Overshot? What? Where were you trying to go? The stranger tried to stand and immediately collapsed back onto the couch, his face going pale. He clutched his ribs and groaned. Marcus moved closer. "Listen, I do not know who you are or where you came from, but you crashed in my field and I saved your life. The least you can do is tell me what is happening." The stranger looked at him for a long moment. Something passed across his face, a calculation, a decision being made in real time. "My name is Ellis," he said finally. "I am from the year 2147, and I need to fix my vessel before they find me." Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. He gripped the arm of his chair to steady himself. Time travel. The man was claiming to be a time traveler. "That is impossible," Marcus said. But even as the words left his mouth, he thought about the vessel, the metal that moved, the symbols that made no sense, the technology that belonged nowhere on Earth. Ellis shook his head slowly. "I know how it sounds, but I can prove it. Check my jacket pocket, the left one. There is something inside you need to see." Marcus hesitated, then moved to where he had hung the strange jacket. He reached into the pocket and pulled out a photograph, and everything he thought he knew about reality shattered. The photograph was of his farmhouse. Marcus recognized it immediately, the same porch, the same windows, the same oak tree in the front yard. But everything else was different. The house had been renovated, expanded, fresh paint, new additions, a garden that did not exist yet. And there were people standing in front of it, a family, a woman, a man, 2 children. They were smiling at the camera like they belonged there, like this was their home. Marcus turned the photograph over. On the back, written in neat handwriting, was a date, June 14th, 2089. And below that, a name. The Chen family, homestead. His hands started shaking. "What is this?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who are these people?" Ellis had managed to sit up properly now, though he still looked pale. "Your descendants," he said. "Your great-great-grandchildren, if I remember correctly." That photograph was taken at a family reunion almost 70 years from now. Marcus stared at the faces in the picture, strangers who shared his blood, a future that had not happened yet. "I do not have any grandchildren," he said. "I barely have a daughter anymore." "I know," Ellis said quietly. "That is part of why I am here. Your bloodline matters more than you know, Marcus. What happens to your family in the next few decades affects everything that comes after." Marcus sat down heavily, still clutching the photograph. His mind could not process what he was hearing. Time travel was fiction. It was movies and books and late-night television. It was not real. But the photograph was real. The vessel in his field was real. The strange man on his couch was real. "How do I know this is not fake?" Marcus demanded. "How do I know you did not just create this on a computer somewhere?" Ellis almost smiled. "In 2147, we do not use computers the way you do. But I understand your doubt. It is natural, healthy even. So, let me ask you this, Marcus. Have you ever seen metal that moves like liquid? Have you ever seen technology that makes no sense by your world's standards?" Marcus thought about the vessel, the way it had opened for him like it was alive. "I saw your machine," he admitted. "Then you already know." Ellis leaned forward, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "I am not here to trick you or deceive you. I am here because something went wrong with my navigation. I was supposed to arrive decades later, after a certain event had already happened. Instead, I am here now, and I am injured, and I need your help to fix my vessel so I can leave. And if I help you," Marcus said slowly, "you will tell me what this is really about? Why my family matters?" Ellis nodded. "Everything," he promised. "I will tell you everything." The next morning, Marcus stood in front of the hidden vessel, pulling away the tarps and corn stalks he had used to conceal it. In the daylight, it looked even more impossible. The hull curved in ways that should not work, angles that seemed to shift depending on where he stood. Ellis had limped out to join him, leaning heavily on a makeshift crutch Marcus had fashioned from an old broom handle. He looked at the vessel with a mixture of relief and worry. "The damage is worse than I thought," Ellis said, "but not unfixable. The main problem is the power coupling and the navigation arrays. Everything else is superficial." Marcus circled the machine slowly. He had spent 40 years as an engineer before retiring to the farm. He had worked on military equipment, industrial machinery, systems that would make most people's heads spin. But this was beyond anything in his experience. "I do not even know where to start," he admitted. Ellis pointed to a panel on the side of the vessel. "That is the access point. The internal systems are actually quite logical once you understand the basic principles. Energy flows in certain patterns. Components connect in predictable ways. The technology is advanced, but the fundamentals are universal." Marcus opened the panel. Inside, he saw a tangle of what looked like wires but glowed faintly with inner light. There were crystalline structures and metal components and things he could not identify at all. "You said you were an engineer," Ellis continued. "That is why I am still alive. When I was scouting landing zones, I saw your workshop. The tools, the projects. You understand how things work, how they fit together." Marcus reached in and touched one of the glowing wires. It was warm, almost alive feeling. "This right here," he said, pointing to a component that looked like a motor, but was not quite. "Does this generate propulsion?" "Yes," Ellis said, a note of approval in his voice. "But the central crystal is cracked. See that fracture line? It needs to be repaired or replaced." Marcus examined the crystal. It was hexagonal, about the size of his fist, glowing faintly blue. A thin crack ran down one side. "I do not have any replacement alien crystals in my workshop," Marcus said dryly. "I know," Ellis replied. "That is why we need to improvise. In my experience, earthly materials can sometimes substitute for damaged components. High-strength epoxy resin, fiber reinforcement. It will not be elegant, but it might work." Marcus looked at the crystal, then at Ellis, then back at the impossible machine in front of him. Every logical part of his brain screamed that this was insane. But another part, the part that had spent a lifetime solving problems everyone said were unsolvable, saw a challenge. "All right," he said finally, "let us see what we can do." They worked on the vessel for hours that first day. Marcus retrieved his tools from the workshop while Ellis directed him, explaining which components did what and how they connected. It was like learning a new language, but Marcus had always been a quick study. By evening, they had made progress on the power coupling. The cracked crystal would take more time, more careful work. But at least now Marcus understood the basic architecture of the machine. They sat on the porch as the sun went down, eating sandwiches Marcus had made. Ellis ate slowly, still recovering from his injuries. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Of course. The photograph, the family. You said my bloodline matters, but you have not told me why." Ellis was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully. "In my time, your family name is famous, not for wealth or power, nothing like that, for something you started, a decision you have not made yet, one that changes everything. Marcus felt frustration building. That is not an answer. What decision? When do I make it? I cannot tell you the specifics, Ellis said, carefully. Knowing too much about your own future can destroy it. If you make a choice because you know the outcome, it is not really a choice anymore. It is performance. And performance does not create the same ripples as authentic decision. Ripples? Ellis set down his sandwich. Let me try to explain how time actually works. It is not what you think, not a river flowing in one direction. It is more like an ocean. There are currents, eddies, waves. The past is not fixed. The future is not determined. Everything is in motion, constantly adjusting. That sounds like chaos, Marcus said. It is not chaos. There are patterns, laws. Cause and effect still exist, but they exist in multiple directions simultaneously. A choice you make today sends ripples forward. Those ripples interact with other ripples. Sometimes they cancel out. Sometimes they amplify. And sometimes, a single choice creates a wave so large it changes everything. And my choice is one of those, Marcus said flatly. A wave. Yes, Ellis admitted. In the original flow of events, your choice creates one of the most significant positive cascades in the next 2 centuries. But if you make a different choice, or no choice at all, the wave never forms. Marcus stared out at the darkening fields. Somewhere out there, hidden in his corn, sat a machine from the future. Inside his house was a man who claimed to know what his life was supposed to mean. What if I do not believe you? He said quietly. Then you do not, Ellis replied simply. I cannot force belief. I can only show you evidence and let you decide. And the evidence was sitting in his pocket. A photograph of people who did not exist yet. The second day of repairs began at dawn. Marcus woke before the sun and found Ellis already outside, examining the vessel with that strange device attached to his wrist. The device projected light in patterns Marcus could not interpret. How are you feeling? Marcus asked. Better, Ellis said. Your medical work was good. The ribs are healing faster than expected. They worked in silence for a while, Marcus handling the physical repairs while Ellis guided him through the alien systems. It was delicate work, requiring precision Marcus had not needed since his engineering days. By mid-morning, they had stabilized the navigation arrays. Ellis seemed pleased but also nervous. He kept checking the device on his wrist, his expression growing more tense each time. Something wrong? Marcus finally asked. Ellis hesitated. There are others looking for me, he said. Temporal enforcement. They monitor unauthorized jumps through time. When I stole this vessel, I knew they would pursue me. Stole? Marcus set down his tools. You stole a time machine? It was necessary, Ellis said firmly. The agency I worked for, they believe in preserving what they call the established timeline. They think any change to history is dangerous, forbidden. But I believe the established timeline is not sacred. It is just the first draft, full of errors and missed opportunities. Marcus processed this. So, you are a rebel, a fugitive. I prefer to think of myself as an editor. Ellis almost smiled. I believe in fixing mistakes, and your timeline contains a mistake that creates tremendous suffering down the road. Suffering that could be prevented. My timeline? Marcus shook his head. A week ago, I was just a retired engineer living alone on a farm. Now you are telling me my life is part of some cosmic manuscript. Not cosmic. Human. Very human. Ellis looked at him directly. Marcus, I need you to understand something. The people pursuing me are dangerous. They will do anything to protect their precious timeline. If they find me here, they will find you too. And they will want to erase your memory of everything. Erase my memory? Standard procedure. They have technology that can remove specific experiences from human consciousness. You would wake up tomorrow with no knowledge of me, the vessel, any of this. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. And that would change my timeline too. Whatever choice I'm supposed to make. Exactly. Ellis glanced at his device again. We have time still. Maybe 12 hours before they can lock onto my position. But we need to work faster, then stop talking and show me what to do next. They returned to work with new urgency. But Marcus could not shake the feeling that something was coming. Something that would change everything whether he was ready or not. The clock was ticking. That evening, Marcus needed a break from the repairs. His hands were cramped and his mind was overwhelmed. He left Ellis resting on the porch and went inside to make coffee. While the pot brewed, he found himself standing in front of the old bookshelf, staring at photographs. His wife Sarah smiled at him from a silver frame. She had been gone 3 years now. Cancer took her slowly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a shell wearing her face. Marcus had held her hand at the end, told her he loved her, watched the light leave her eyes. Next to Sarah's photo was one of his daughter Emily, taken 15 years ago at her college graduation. She was laughing, holding her diploma high, full of hope and possibility. Marcus barely recognized that girl now. The argument that ended their relationship had been stupid. A disagreement about her career choices that escalated into years of silence. Pride on both sides, stubbornness passed down through generations. He had not spoken to her in 5 years. There were other photographs too. His parents, both gone now. His brother David, killed in a car accident when Marcus was just 22. A whole gallery of loss arranged on wooden shelves. Ellis appeared in the doorway, moving carefully with his healing ribs. He looked at the photographs, then at Marcus. "You have experienced significant loss," he said softly. "Everyone loses people," Marcus replied without turning around. "True, but some people let loss define them. They become their grief." Marcus finally looked at him. "And some people visit from the future to lecture complete strangers about their emotional state." "I am not lecturing." Ellis moved into the room slowly. "I am observing. You live alone in a house full of photographs of dead people and estranged family. You spend your days fixing machines because machines do not leave or die or stop loving you." Marcus felt anger rise in his chest, but fought it down. "You do not know anything about me. I know more than you think." Ellis sat down in the chair across from the bookshelf. "I know that the choice that matters, the one that creates the wave, it involves your daughter." Marcus went very still. "The estrangement," Ellis continued. "What you do about it in the next 6 months determines everything. Reconciliation or permanent severance. That is the pivot point." Marcus set down his coffee cup with shaking hands. "Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. And because we may be running out of time." Outside, the sun had fully set. Somewhere in the darkness, a machine that could travel through time sat waiting, and Marcus Chen finally understood that his own future was the real destination. That night, Marcus could not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind churning with everything Ellis had told him. His daughter, the estrangement. 6 months to determine everything. He kept thinking about the last conversation he had with Emily. It had been over the phone, 5 years ago. She had told him she was leaving her corporate job to become an artist. He had told her she was throwing away her future. She had called him controlling and small-minded. He had called her ungrateful and naive. Neither of them had apologized. Since then, he had picked up the phone 100 times. Typed messages he never sent. Drafted emails he always deleted. Pride was a wall he did not know how to climb. At 3 in the morning, he gave up on sleep and went downstairs. Ellis was already awake, sitting in the living room with that device projecting complex patterns into the air. "The repairs are progressing well," Ellis said without looking up. "Tomorrow, we should be able to complete the power coupling." Marcus sat down across from him. "I need to know more," he said, "about my daughter, about what happens." Ellis was quiet for a moment, then dismissed the projections with a wave of his hand. "I have already told you more than I should. Then tell me more than you should." Marcus leaned forward. "You crashed into my life. You showed me a photograph of descendants I will never meet. You told me my family matters. Now, finish the story." Ellis studied him with those two aware eyes. "In the original timeline, the one without interference, you die alone. Your daughter never forgives you. The estrangement becomes permanent. Your bloodline ends with you." Marcus felt like he had been punched. "But," Ellis continued, "in the timeline I am trying to protect, you make a different choice. You reach out. You heal the relationship. Your daughter has children. Those children have children. And 3 generations from now, one of your descendants does something extraordinary. What do? I cannot tell you specifics, but I can tell you it changes human civilization for the better. Medical advances, social progress, technological breakthroughs, all traceable back to your family line. To choices made by people who only exist because you decided to swallow your pride." Marcus slumped back in his chair. That is a lot of pressure to put on one old man. It is not pressure, Ellis said gently. It is possibility. The choice is still yours to make. I am just showing you what is at stake. Through the window, Marcus could see the stars. Somewhere out there, the future was waiting. People who might exist, people who might not. And it all depended on one phone call he had been too afraid to make. By the third day, the repairs were nearly complete. Marcus had learned more about temporal mechanics in 72 hours than most humans would learn in a lifetime. Ellis was a patient teacher, explaining concepts until Marcus could grasp them, even if he could not fully understand. As they worked on the final connections, Marcus brought up something that had been bothering him. You said there are people trying to protect the established timeline, he said. But what makes one timeline more established than another? Ellis paused his work. That is the fundamental question my group has been asking for decades. The agency claims the established timeline is the natural flow of events without interference. But that is philosophically incoherent. How so? Ellis set down his tools. Every choice anyone makes interferes with the natural flow. Free will is reality editing. When you decided to help me instead of calling authorities, you changed the timeline. When you chose to stay on this farm instead of selling it, you changed the timeline. There is no such thing as non-interference. So, the temporal enforcement people are wrong. Not wrong exactly, just selective. They want to preserve specific outcomes that benefit certain structures of power. They call it protecting history, but really they are just protecting their version of history. Marcus thought about this. And your group wants a different version. My group believes that some mistakes in the timeline are too costly to accept. Not small mistakes, not personal regrets, but cascading failures that cause massive suffering. Your bloodline extinction is one of those. It sets off a chain of events that leads to genuine catastrophe centuries from now. So, I am supposed to save the world by calling my daughter. Ellis almost laughed. When you put it that way, it sounds absurd. But yes, essentially. The small choices are the ones that matter most. Not grand gestures or heroic sacrifices. Just ordinary humans making slightly better decisions than they otherwise would. Marcus returned to the wiring he was connecting. It is strange, he said. All my life, I thought my choices were just mine, private, affecting only me. Now you are telling me every decision sends ripples I cannot see. That is exactly what I am telling you, Ellis confirmed. And it is both terrifying and liberating once you accept it. Terrifying because responsibility is real. Liberating because meaning is real too. Your life matters. Your choices matter. Not just to you, but to everyone downstream of your existence. Marcus finished the connection and stepped back. The vessel hummed quietly, systems coming online one by one. It is almost ready, Ellis said, checking his device. A few more hours and I can leave. And then, what happens to me? Then you live your life, Ellis said simply. With new knowledge, and hopefully, new courage. The vessel was functional now, ready for departure, but Ellis did not leave immediately. Instead, he stood in front of Marcus with something in his hand, a small device that glowed with soft blue light. Before I go, I want to offer you something, Ellis said, not as payment, as gratitude. Marcus eyed the device suspiciously. What is it? A verification tool. It can show you historical records from my time. Not detailed predictions, that would be dangerous, but confirmed outcomes. The legacy your choice creates. You want to show me the future. I want to show you proof that the future exists, that your choices matter, that you are not just an old man dying alone on a farm. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. Is it safe? The process is harmless. I will project information directly into your neural pathways. You will experience it like a very vivid dream. It takes about 3 minutes. Marcus hesitated. Everything logical in him said this was a terrible idea, but everything emotional in him needed to see, needed to know. Do it, he said. Ellis pressed the device against Marcus's temple. There was a moment of disorientation, and then Marcus was somewhere else entirely. He saw his family name on buildings: Chen Medical Institute, Chen Foundation for Human Development, Chen Academy for Advanced Sciences. He saw faces he did not recognize, men and women who carried something of his features, his eyes, his chin. He saw a world transformed, disease conquered, poverty reduced, education available to everyone. And threaded through all of it, like a golden strand, was his family. Not as rulers or celebrities, but as contributors, healers, teachers, builders. And then he saw the other path. The branch where he never called, where his daughter remained estranged, where his line ended with him. In that version, the world was darker. The same problems existed, but the solutions came slower or not at all. The cascade he was supposed to create never formed. The vision ended. Marcus gasped and staggered backward. Ellis caught his arm, steadying him. "What you saw," Ellis said quietly, "is not guaranteed. It is possible. The choice still has to be made authentically, from your heart, not from seeing this. But now you know what is at stake." Marcus wiped his eyes. He had not realized he was crying. "My daughter," he whispered, "she is the beginning of everything." "No," Ellis said firmly. "You are the beginning. She is the continuation. But it starts with you, with one choice, one moment of courage." Marcus looked at his shaking hands, these same hands that had repaired an impossible machine, these same hands that had been too proud to dial a simple phone number. "What if she does not answer?" he asked. "What if she hangs up?" "Then you try again. That is the only strategy that ever works." Marcus emerged from the vision, feeling like a different person. Not changed exactly, but expanded. Like a room with walls pushed back, revealing space that had always been there, but hidden. He walked to the kitchen and sat at the table where he and Sarah used to eat breakfast. The morning light was just beginning to filter through the windows. In the photograph he still carried in his pocket, descendants he might never meet smiled at him from 70 years in the future. Ellis followed him inside, moving more easily now. His injuries had healed remarkably fast. Probably some future medicine Marcus did not fully understand. "I have a question," Marcus said. "Ask. In the vision, I saw the good path. But I also saw what happens if I do not call Emily, the darker timeline. If that version exists too, then does anything I do really matter? Is not both outcomes equally real?" Ellis sat across from him. "That is a profound question. One my people have debated for generations. The best answer I can give is this. From your perspective, only one outcome will be experienced. You will live in one timeline, not both. And within that timeline, your choices are the only mechanism of change. So, free will is real. Free will is the only thing that is real. Everything else, physical matter, energy, even time itself, is just the medium through which will operates." Marcus absorbed this. "Then why do so many people feel powerless? Why did I feel powerless for so long?" "Because you were taught to feel powerless," Ellis said simply. "Every institution that wants to control people teaches them that they have no control. Governments, corporations, religions, they all benefit from convincing you that someone else is in charge of your destiny. But someone else is not in charge. No, you are. And that is both the liberation and the burden. When you understand that you create your reality through choice, you can no longer blame anyone else for your circumstances. You become fully responsible." Marcus thought about the years he had spent blaming external forces for his unhappiness, blaming his ex-wife for their divorce, blaming his boss for his career frustrations, blaming God for his wife's cancer, blaming Emily for the estrangement. "I have been a victim my whole life," he said quietly, "not because bad things happened to me, because I chose to see myself that way." "Most people do," Ellis confirmed. "It is the default setting for human consciousness. Awakening from it requires tremendous courage, and calling my daughter is the first step. It is not the first step." Ellis smiled slightly. "The first step was helping a wounded stranger instead of running away. You already have the courage, Marcus. You just have not applied it to the hardest target. The hardest target. His own pride, his own fear." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding at last. That afternoon, Ellis's device began flashing red. He checked it, and his expression shifted to something Marcus had not seen before: fear. "They have found me," Ellis said. "Temporal enforcement has locked onto the vessel's energy signature. They will be here within hours." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What do we do?" "You do nothing. You stay inside. You pretend you never saw me. The memory erasure technology requires proximity. If you are not near them when they arrive, They cannot affect you. But the vessel, it is in my field. I will leave before they arrive. The repairs are complete. But Marcus, I need to tell you more before I go. Everything I have held back. Then tell me, Marcus said. No more secrets. Ellis took a deep breath. In the original timeline, the one temporal enforcement considers established, you die alone in 4 years. Heart attack. Your daughter finds out 2 weeks later. She comes to the farm to settle your estate. She finds your journals, letters you wrote to her but never sent. Marcus felt his throat tighten. She reads them. She learns how much you loved her, how sorry you were, how you wanted to reach out but did not know how. And it breaks her. Not because you died, but because you died without her knowing the truth. Marcus covered his face with his hands. She never fully recovers, Ellis continued gently. She carries that guilt for the rest of her life. She never has children because she is too afraid of becoming you, of pushing people away, of dying without saying what needs to be said. And the bloodline ends, Marcus whispered. Yes, but it does not have to happen that way. If you reach out now, while you are alive, while there is still time, everything changes, not just for her, for everyone who comes after. Marcus lowered his hands. His eyes were wet but clear. Why did you not tell me this sooner? Because you needed to be ready to hear it. You needed to see enough, experience enough, understand enough to believe. If I had told you on the first day, you would have dismissed it as manipulation. Marcus nodded slowly. He understood. The truth had to be earned, not given. The device flashed again, more urgently this time. I have to prepare the vessel, Ellis said, standing. We have maybe 2 hours. But, Marcus, there is one more thing I need to give you before I leave. What? A reason to believe this was real. After they come, after I am gone, you will need something to hold on to. Something to remind you that this actually happened. Ellis reached into his jacket and pulled out 3 items. The photograph, a small crystal that pulsed with inner light, and something else, instructions. Ellis spread the items on the kitchen table. The photograph Marcus had already seen. The crystal was similar to the one in the vessel, glowing with that same soft blue light. The third item was a thin sheet of material covered in symbols. The photograph is your proof, Ellis explained. Keep it somewhere safe. When you doubt, look at it. And the crystal? An amplifier. Hold it when you meditate or pray or whatever practice helps you focus. It will help strengthen your intention, clarify your thoughts. Think of it as training wheels for consciousness. Marcus picked up the crystal. It was warm in his palm, vibrating at a frequency he could almost hear. What about this? He pointed to the sheet of symbols. Instructions, Ellis said. Not for operating technology, for operating yourself. Principles I have learned from studying humans who achieved extraordinary things. Not complicated principles, simple ones that most people never follow. Marcus examined the symbols. They meant nothing to him. I cannot read this. You do not need to. I will translate. Ellis touched the sheet and it glowed briefly. Now, look again. The symbols had transformed into English words. Marcus read them slowly. Call before you are ready. Apologize before you understand. Love before it is safe. Begin before you believe you can succeed. These are the instructions? Marcus asked. They sound like fortune cookies. Ellis smiled. The deepest truths often do. But consider each one. Call before you are ready. That is exactly what stops you from reaching out to Emily. You are waiting until you know what to say, until you feel prepared, but that moment never comes. Marcus read the second line again. Apologize before you understand. You do not need to understand why the relationship broke, Ellis continued. You do not need to analyze whose fault it was. You just need to apologize for your part, for being absent, for prioritizing pride over presence, and love before it is safe. The safest relationships are often the most sterile. Real love requires vulnerability, exposure, the possibility of being hurt. You have protected yourself from that possibility for so long that you have also protected yourself from connection. Marcus read the final line. Begin before you believe you can succeed. Every meaningful achievement starts in doubt. If you wait for certainty, you will wait forever. The belief comes after the beginning, not before. The device on Ellis's wrist flashed urgently. "They are close now," Ellis said. "I have to go. But remember these principles. They are not magic. They are mechanics, the mechanics of change." He gathered himself and headed for the door. Marcus followed. "One more thing," Ellis said, pausing at the threshold. "When you call Emily, do not apologize for being wrong. Apologize for being absent. There is a difference, and she needs to hear that you choose her over your pride." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. And then Ellis was gone, limping toward the vessel in the field. Marcus watched from the porch as Ellis climbed into the vessel. The machine hummed to life, the hull glowing with that same shifting light Marcus had seen on the first night. It rose silently from the crushed corn, hovering just above the ground. For a moment, nothing happened. Ellis was inside, preparing for departure. Marcus felt a strange grief, like watching a friend leave for a journey from which they would never return. Then 3 figures materialized in the field. They appeared out of nothing, stepping through air that bent and rippled around them. They wore dark uniforms and moved with mechanical precision. Marcus could see their faces, human but cold, enhanced somehow in ways he could not identify. Temporal enforcement. One of them raised a hand toward the vessel. "Stop," she commanded. "Ellis, stand down." The vessel did not stop. Instead, it rose higher, gaining altitude rapidly. "We will pursue," the woman said. "You cannot escape." "I do not need to escape," Ellis's voice came from a speaker on the vessel's hull. "I just need to give him time." The 3 enforcers turned toward the farmhouse, toward Marcus. Marcus felt his blood go cold. They were coming for him, coming to erase everything he had learned. But then Ellis did something. A light erupted from the vessel, blinding and absolute. Marcus threw his arms over his eyes, falling backward. The light seemed to penetrate everything, burning through his eyelids, filling his mind with white. When it faded, when Marcus could see again, the field was different. The vessel was gone. Ellis was gone. And the 3 enforcers lay motionless on the ground, unconscious or dead. Marcus could not tell. He stood frozen for a long moment, waiting for more of them to appear. Nothing happened. The field was silent except for the wind moving through the corn. Marcus walked slowly toward the scorched earth where the vessel had been. The ground was blackened in a perfect circle, still warm to the touch. There was no wreckage, no debris, nothing to prove that anything had happened except the burned corn and the 3 fallen figures. He checked the enforcers. They were alive, breathing steadily, but completely unconscious. He did not know how long they would stay that way. Moving quickly now, Marcus dragged them to the edge of the field and left them there. He did not know what else to do with them. Then he ran back to the house. In his pocket, he could feel the photograph and the crystal, solid and real. The instructions were still on the kitchen table. Ellis was gone. The pursuers were neutralized, at least temporarily. And Marcus stood alone with knowledge that no one else on Earth possessed, and a choice that still needed to be made. 3 days passed. Marcus did not sleep much. He kept expecting more enforcers to arrive, kept watching the sky for vessels, kept checking the field for signs of intrusion. Nothing came. The 3 unconscious figures had vanished by the morning after the incident. When Marcus went to check on them, the spot where he had left them was empty. They had either recovered and left, or someone had taken them. Either way, they were gone. Life returned to a strange approximation of normal. Marcus did his chores, tended his equipment, ate his meals, but everything felt different. Every moment carried a weight it had not carried before. He kept the photograph in his nightstand drawer, the crystal he carried in his pocket at all times, the instructions he had memorized and burned, not wanting to leave evidence. Call before you are ready. Every day he thought about Emily. Every day he picked up the phone and put it back down. The words would not come. What could he possibly say after 5 years of silence? On the 3rd night, Marcus sat on the porch watching the stars. Somewhere out there, Ellis was traveling through time. Somewhere out there, descendants who might or might not exist waited for Marcus to make a choice. He pulled out the crystal and held it in his palm. It glowed gently, warming his skin. "I do not know how to do this," he said to no one. "I do not know what to say." The crystal pulsed as if responding. Of course it did not actually respond. It was just a tool, an amplifier. But holding it made Marcus feel less alone somehow. He thought about what Ellis had told him. the vision he had seen, the future that could be, a world transformed by choices that started here, now, with him. And he thought about the other vision, the one where he died alone, where Emily found out 2 weeks later, where she read his unsent letters and carried guilt for the rest of her life. That was the real horror, not his own death. That was coming regardless. But the pain he would cause by leaving things unsaid, the wound that would never heal because he had been too proud to try. Marcus gripped the crystal tighter. "I am not ready," he whispered to the darkness. "I do not know what to say. I am terrified she will reject me." But then he remembered the instruction. Begin before you believe you can succeed. The belief comes after the beginning, not before. Marcus stood up slowly. He walked inside. He picked up the phone. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. But he did not put it down. He dialed Emily's number from memory. He had never forgotten it. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then she answered. "Dad?" Emily's voice was confused, cautious. 5 years of silence hung between them, like a physical barrier. Marcus closed his eyes. Everything he had planned to say evaporated. Every careful phrase he had rehearsed disappeared. "Emily," he said, and his voice broke. "I am not calling to be right. I am not calling to rehash the past, or make you apologize or explain yourself. I am calling because I miss you. I am calling because I choose you over my pride. I am calling because I do not want to die without you knowing that." There was silence on the other end. A silence that stretched so long, Marcus thought she might have hung up. Then he heard it. A sound he had not heard in years. Emily was crying. "Dad," she said through tears, "I thought you hated me. Never. God, Emily, never. I hated myself for not knowing how to reach out. I hated my own stubbornness, but I never, not for 1 second, hated you. Then why did you wait so long?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you would reject me. Afraid I had already lost you forever. Afraid that trying and failing would be worse than not trying at all." "I was afraid too," Emily whispered. "Every day I wanted to call. Every day I talked myself out of it." "We are quite a pair," Marcus said, and he laughed, a wet, broken laugh that released something that had been trapped inside him for years. They talked for 2 hours. Not about the argument, not about blame or justification, just talked. About Emily's life in Seattle, about her art career that had actually flourished, about her husband whom Marcus had never met, about the farm, about missing her mother, about all the years they had lost to pride. When they finally hung up, Marcus sat in the dark kitchen, the phone still warm in his hand. Something had shifted. Not the world, not history, not the future. Something inside him. A wall that had stood for decades had finally crumbled. He pulled out the photograph from the drawer. The Chen family homestead, June 14th, 2089. People who did not exist yet, smiling at a camera that had not been invented. Maybe now they would exist. Maybe now the cascade would begin. Marcus did not know. He could not see the future, not really. But he knew something for certain. He had made the call. He had started the beginning. And whatever came next, he would face it with his daughter beside him. Not as estranged strangers, but as family. The crystal in his pocket glowed softly. And somewhere, somewhen, a timeline shifted. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same field where the vessel had crashed. New corn had grown tall in the summer sun, erasing any evidence of what had happened that night. The scorched earth was gone. The broken stalks were gone. Everything looked exactly as it always had. But Marcus was different. A car came down the dirt road, kicking up dust in the afternoon light. Marcus watched it approach, his heart full in a way he had not felt in years. Emily got out of the driver's seat. She was more beautiful than he remembered, but also different, softer somehow. The hardness that had built up during their estrangement had melted away over 6 months of regular calls, visits, slow rebuilding. Her husband James followed, a quiet man with kind eyes who had welcomed Marcus into their family without judgment or accusation. And then Emily opened the back door. She emerged holding her belly, round and full with new life. Marcus felt tears spring to his eyes. "Surprise," Emily said, smiling. "I wanted to tell you in person." Marcus crossed the distance between them and hugged his daughter carefully, mindful of the precious cargo she carried. He could not speak. The emotions were too big for words. "I am going to be a grandfather," he finally managed. "You are going to be the best grandfather," Emily replied. "This baby is going to grow up knowing you, really knowing you." They walked toward the house together, Emily pointing out things she remembered from childhood. The old oak tree she used to climb, the porch swing where her mother used to read stories, the window of her old bedroom. Marcus listened, but part of his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about ripples, about choices that create waves, about descendants who might exist, because one old man found the courage to pick up a phone. After dinner, Marcus excused himself and walked out to the field alone. The corn was high now, almost ready for harvest. The stars were just beginning to appear overhead. He stood in the exact spot where Ellis's vessel had rested. There was nothing there now, no evidence, no mark, just ordinary Nebraska dirt. Marcus pulled out the photograph. He looked at it in the fading light. The Chen family homestead, 2089. People who still did not exist yet, but might soon. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty field, to Ellis, wherever and whenever he was. "Thank you for crashing into my life." The wind stirred the corn. For a moment, Marcus could almost imagine he heard a reply. But it was probably just the breeze. He put the photograph back in his pocket and walked toward the house, where his daughter was laughing at something James had said. The legacy had begun. The baby was born on a clear November morning. A girl. They named her Sarah, after Marcus's wife. Marcus was in the waiting room when she arrived, too nervous to be in the delivery room, but too stubborn to be anywhere else. When James came out to tell him it was done, that everyone was healthy, Marcus wept openly. Holding his granddaughter for the first time, Marcus felt the full weight of time pressing down on him. This small creature, this impossibly fragile new life, was the beginning of everything Ellis had shown him. She was the first link in a chain that stretched into a future Marcus would never see. "She is perfect," he said to Emily, who was exhausted but radiant. "She is," Emily agreed. "And she is going to know her grandfather, really know him." "I will make sure of it," Marcus promised. "I will tell her stories. I will teach her to fix things. I will be present in ways I was not always present for you." Emily reached out and took his hand. "We are past that, Dad. We have been past that for months. I know, but I still want to say it. I still want you to know." They spent a week at Marcus's farm after the hospital. Emily recovered while Marcus did everything he could to help. Cooking meals, doing laundry, holding Sarah whenever possible. At night, when the house was quiet and everyone else was sleeping, Marcus would sit on the porch with his granddaughter in his arms. He would tell her about her grandmother, about the farm, about the family history that stretched back generations. And sometimes he would tell her about a stranger who crashed in the cornfield, a man from the future who showed Marcus what was possible. He told her about choices and ripples, about timelines and legacies, about the power that every human being carries inside them to shape reality through decision. Sarah was too young to understand, of course. She just looked up at him with wide, curious eyes, and occasionally made sounds that might have been agreement. But Marcus told her anyway. He wanted the words to be out there, spoken into the universe, recorded in whatever way the universe recorded such things. "You are going to do great things," he told her one night. "I do not know what they are. I will probably not live to see them, but I know they are coming. Because your great-great-grandfather made a choice. Your grandmother made choices. Your mother made choices. And one day, you will make choices too." Sarah yawned and closed her eyes. Marcus held her and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the future was taking shape, ripples spreading outward from this moment, this farmhouse, this family. And it had all started with a wounded stranger in a cornfield. Marcus lived another 12 years after Sarah was born. Good years, full years, years he would not have had if he had followed the original timeline Ellis had described. He watched Sarah grow from an infant into a curious, brilliant child. He watched Emily and James welcome a second child, a boy named David, after Marcus's long-lost brother. He watched his family expand and flourish in ways he had never imagined possible. He told no one about Ellis, not Emily, not James, not anyone. The secret was too large, too impossible. No one would believe him anyway. And the proof, the photograph, and the crystal, those were for him alone. The crystal he kept in a small wooden box on his nightstand. He held it sometimes when he meditated, feeling its warmth, its gentle pulse. He did not know if it actually did anything or if it was just a reminder. Either way, it comforted him. The photograph he looked at every year on the anniversary of Ellis's crash. The faces of his descendants, smiling from a future he was building one choice at a time. In his final year, when the doctors told him his heart was failing, Marcus felt no fear. He had done what he was supposed to do. He had made the call. He had rebuilt the relationship. He had been present for his family in ways he had not known he was capable of. The legacy was secure. On his last day, Marcus sat on the porch of the farmhouse with Emily beside him. Sarah, now 12, was playing in the field with her brother David. Their laughter carried on the wind. "Dad," Emily said quietly, "are you scared?" "No," Marcus replied honestly. "I have had more time than I deserved. I have fixed what needed fixing. I am ready." Emily was crying, but she nodded. "I am going to miss you. I know, but I will still be here. In the walls, in the fields, in the stories you tell your children. The things we love never really leave us." They sat in silence for a while, watching the children play. "Emily," Marcus said eventually, "I want to tell you something I have never told anyone." And for the first time in 12 years, Marcus told the truth. He told her about the crash, about Ellis, about the future that hung in the balance of one phone call. Emily listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Do you believe me?" Marcus asked. Emily squeezed his hand. "I believe that something happened to you, something that changed you, something that gave you the courage to reach out. Does it matter if the details are literally true?" Marcus thought about this. "No," he said finally. "I suppose it does not." They watched the sunset together. Father and daughter, past and future, connected at last. Marcus Chen passed away peacefully in his sleep that night. He was 82 years old. His family was with him at the end. The funeral was small but beautiful. Emily spoke about her father's transformation in his final years, how he had become the man she always knew he could be. She did not mention time travelers or crashed vessels. Some truths are too big for eulogies. After the service, Emily walked through the farmhouse one last time. She was going to keep it in the family, maintain it as a place where future generations could connect with their roots. In Marcus's bedroom, she found the wooden box on his nightstand. Inside were two items: a crystal that glowed faintly with blue light, and a photograph. Emily picked up the photograph and turned it over. June 14th, 2089. The Chen family homestead. She looked at the faces in the picture, strangers, but also somehow familiar. The same eyes, the same chin, the same something that marked them as her family. Emily did not know what to make of it. Her father's story had seemed impossible when he told it, but here was evidence, physical evidence of something beyond explanation. She put the photograph back in the box and closed it. Some mysteries were not meant to be solved. Some truths were meant only to be carried. In the field behind the house, Sarah was running through the corn with her brother. Emily watched them from the window, thinking about choices and ripples and legacies. "Mom," Sarah called out, "come play with us." Emily smiled and walked outside to join her children. The future could wait. Right now, the present needed her attention. That evening, Emily sat on the porch where her father had spent so many hours. She held the photograph in her hands, studying the faces of her descendants. "I do not know if any of this is true," she said to the empty air, "but I promise to pass it on, to tell Sarah and David, to make sure they know they matter, that their choices matter." The wind stirred the corn. For a moment, Emily could almost imagine she heard a reply. She put the photograph in her pocket and went inside to tuck her children into bed. The legacy continued, and in a future that might or might not exist, in a time that might or might not come, the ripples spread outward, from one old man who found the courage to make a phone call, from one choice that created a wave, from one family that refused to let pride destroy love. Marcus Chen had fixed a wounded time traveler, and in return, he had received the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that he mattered, that his choices mattered, that love, freely given, could change everything. The year was 2147. The world had changed in ways Marcus Chen could never have imagined. A young woman walked through a memorial garden in what used to be Nebraska. The farm was still there, preserved as a historical site, but the surrounding landscape was transformed. Clean energy towers rose in the distance. Transportation systems hummed quietly overhead. Disease and poverty had been largely conquered. Her name was Chen. She was 24 years old, and she was here to pay her respects. The memorial plaque was simple: brass letters on stone, weathered by a century of seasons. Marcus Chen, 1966 to 2048. He made the call. Elena placed flowers at the base of the plaque. White lilies, her grandmother's favorites. Or, so the family stories said. "Hello, grandfather," she said quietly. "I brought you something." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. It projected a holographic image into the air. A photograph, the same photograph that had started everything. The Chen family homestead, 2089. "We took this last summer," Elena said. "4 generations of Chens standing exactly where you stood. We do it every year now. It is a tradition." She looked at the photograph, at the faces of her family, her parents, her siblings, her grandmother Sarah, still alive at 93, still telling stories about the grandfather who taught her to fix things. "The stories say you met a time traveler," Elena continued. "They say he crashed in your field and you helped him. They say he showed you the future and you made a choice that changed everything." She smiled. "I used to think it was just a legend, a family myth that grew bigger with each generation. But then I joined the temporal resistance, and I learned the truth." Elena looked at the uniform she wore, the insignia on her shoulder, the same organization Ellis had belonged to, still fighting for the same cause. "We found his records," she said. "Ellis, we found his mission reports. He documented everything: the crash, the repairs, the conversations you had, the moment you made the call." She knelt beside the plaque. "You did not just change our family, grandfather. You changed the world. The cascade you started led to breakthroughs in medicine, education, social justice. Billions of people have better lives because you found the courage to pick up a phone." Elena wiped her eyes. She had not expected to cry. "I am going back soon," she said, "back in time. There are other pivot points, other choices that need to be made. But I wanted to come here first, to thank you, to let you know that it worked." She stood up and took one last look at the memorial. "Thank you, grandfather, for everything." Then she walked away, toward a vessel waiting in the field, toward a past that needed changing. The legacy continued. What Marcus Chen discovered in that cornfield is something that has been hidden from most of humanity, not by conspiracy or malice, but simply because most people are not ready to hear it. Every choice you make matters. Every decision sends ripples into a future you cannot see. The small choices are often the biggest ones: a phone call, an apology, a moment of courage when fear tells you to stay silent. You have more power than you have been taught, much more. For 60 years, Marcus believed he was powerless. He believed that life happened to him, not through him. He believed that his choices did not matter, that his family was broken beyond repair, that it was too late to change anything. He was wrong. And if he was wrong, maybe you are too. Maybe that relationship you think is beyond saving can still be healed. Maybe that dream you abandoned is still waiting. Maybe that conversation you have been avoiding is the one that changes everything. You do not need a time traveler to crash in your field. You do not need proof of futures that might exist. You do not need permission from anyone to make a different choice. You just need courage. The courage to call before you are ready, to apologize before you understand, to love before it is safe, to begin before you believe you can succeed. These are not just words, they are mechanics, the mechanics of change. Marcus Chen learned this from a stranger named Ellis. He applied it to his own life, and the results rippled outward for centuries. What could happen if you applied it to yours? I am not asking you to believe in time travel. I am not asking you to accept impossible stories as literal truth. I am asking you to consider the possibility that your choices matter more than you think, because they do. They always have. And if you are sitting there right now, thinking about someone you have not called, something you have not said, a bridge you have not tried to rebuild, then maybe this story found you for a reason. Maybe this is your moment. Maybe right now, somewhere in your pocket or on your desk, there is a phone waiting for you to pick it up, a number waiting to be dialed, a future waiting to be created. What are you going to do about it? The choice, as always, is yours. But remember what Ellis said. The belief comes after the beginning, not before. So begin, make the call, say the words, take the step, and watch as ripples spread outward from this moment into a future you cannot yet imagine. That is the secret Marcus Chen learned from a wounded time traveler. That is the truth that shook everything he thought he knew, and now it belongs to you.